Hello 2360 students. So last week, the last couple of weeks, we've been working on Module 5. You had your fieldwork Part A due. So if you had any concerns or questions, you should have got that submitted. If you've not submitted it, please contact me. It was due on March 23rd. So that was Part A. And that was in Module 5. So this week, but actually these next couple weeks, we're going to be working in Module 6. So really Module 6 is going to be looking at social skills. It's going to be looking at the social development skills and how it's important for students of early childhood to be able to develop those social interactions, and you help prepare them with those social skills. So I want to first go ahead and look at kind of an overview of what you'll be doing. You'll obviously be reading in your textbook chapters. You'll have your 2 learning modules, so 6.1 and 6.2. There are some videos, there's some links within the lessons themselves, and you are going to complete a discussion activity. You'll have your Module 6 quiz, and you also have your fieldwork Part B due. So we're going to talk about all of those. So if you look at the due dates here that I put, Part B of the fieldwork assignment is due April 9th. Okay, so everything opens for Module 6. It's open, we'll start it on March 27th, and then April 16th is when everything's due. But you'll notice the only thing that's changed as far as the due date is going to be the fieldwork Part B, which we'll go over. So moving on into Module 6, I have placed some focusing questions and then of course your learning objectives here for you. So these questions really help guide your thinking as you're going through the content. So I'll make sure that I read them first so you kind of get an idea of what you're going to be focusing on for this lesson for Module 6. And when we get done, you will be able to, after completing this module, be able to know all of these objectives, but these are really going to be able to focus and complete our overall learning objectives, or our CLOs. So in the textbook, you're going to be reading Chapter 15 and Chapter 18. So 15 is really going to be talking about how do you as a teacher facilitate social development within early childhood. And then Chapter 18 is going to focus on those challenging behaviors that you're going to see when we're talking about social development. So here are vocabulary words that you're going to be looking and focusing on for Module 6. Okay, so here we're going to start into Lesson 6.1, which is our first lesson. So the first lesson is really focusing on those social skills. So thinking about emotions, what's acceptable, how do children develop them, what are the characteristics, and what does social emotional intelligence actually mean? What's some conditions that will impact the different types of social skills? So this is the first section that I want you to look at. The next one is talking about what you as a teacher need to be observing, okay? So how do you determine something is a social skill? So we have this little section here that talks about it. I also included a link for sociograms. This is really a great way for you to illustrate like communication or how children are interacting with each other or a group of friends. And it talks about how social skills is also developed through play. So make sure that you look at that section. Okay, then we come to how do you actually facilitate learning of appropriate social emotional skills when we're talking about early childhood. So there's a pyramid model that I have here. There's also other resources, and then there's a video that really goes over some practical strategies that you as a teacher can really use with teaching them in the classroom. So please make sure you watch that video. Okay. Next, we look at executive functions and what they actually are. Okay, how are they related to children developing those social skills, right? And what does it mean when we're talking about executive function and self-regulation? Okay, so I want you to look at this section, okay, and it even goes into some behaviors that might you might see. It also goes into how children should have multiple opportunities, for those self-regulating skills, social experiences that help them. So this section actually has a few links included, and then there's also a video that's really going in more depth about executive functioning and why it's so important. Okay, so when we're talking about executive function and those self-regulation skills, I can't say that word, excuse me, you have to support them. Okay, this is important for their overall learning and development. So there's different activities here depending on what age group you have in early childhood that I want you to look at. Okay, so that was the first lesson. The second lesson is really going to be talking about behavior, right? So what kind of behaviors are you going to notice and see, and how do we deal with those? So the first part is talking about instructive discipline. Okay, so this is an article that talks about what it is, and it provides like an approach, an instructive approach of how can you deal with those challenging behaviors. So this section is really helpful for you as a teacher. So make sure you look at that. The next one really defines what challenging behavior is and what it actually means when we say challenging behavior. Okay, here's a pyramid model that really talks about how you can address challenging behavior and like what the relationship is. How do you as a teacher support them? So the kind of like an intervention model, if you will. Okay, so the next one is talking about positive behavior support and then school-wide positive behavior intervention and support. Okay, so how are they different, and how are they different compared to traditional discipline approaches? There's also a video that it's a short video that explains the program when we're talking about PBIS. Here in the next section, we're talking about functional approach, like what is it when we're looking at behavior specifically. There's a model here or a chart that it kind of explains in terms of behavior, what would the functional approach look like. Okay, so it's like when we're talking about PBS, so obviously we're talking about interventions, right? But it has to be matched to the function of the behavior, so why the child is doing it. So there are some videos here that are going to talk to you or let you look at before and after of a child who is on the spectrum, excuse me, and the mother is working with a therapist to try to respond to the function of this child's behavior. So make sure you watch that. Remember, one is before and one is after. Okay, so remember, whenever you have challenging behavior, the child is communicating something to you. So you have to figure out what the function of the behavior is. What are they trying to communicate with me? Okay. So there's a little bit more of explanation about what we talk about when we're saying the child's trying to communicate. So obviously it's going to be the child's either trying to obtain or avoid something, right? And when we look at what they're trying to obtain or avoid, we're looking at specifically these three categories. So now that you have all this information, we have to determine what's the best way to deal with the challenging behavior. So once you figure out what the child's trying to do, what they're communicating to you, then you need to figure out what methods should you use to help with the challenging behavior, right? So it really goes into functional behavior assessments and their approaches and why they're important, right? This data that we're gathering, that's going to help us. So one of the ways that you can do a direct observation is called ABC. And this ABC is looking at antecedent, the behavior, and the consequence. Now, antecedent is really discussing the trigger. Okay, what happens right before this behavior is happening? So the behavior is what you see the child doing or what they're trying to communicate. And the consequence is what do you as a teacher do as soon as that behavior occurs. So how do you deal with it? Okay, so all that together is really going to help you figure out the function of the behavior. So this video really is going to walk you through the ABCs of behavior. So this is like an overview to teach you how to do an ABC or conduct one. Okay, so the next section, after you figure out the function or the reason behind the behavior, you have to develop a hypothesis. Now, when you're developing a hypothesis, this is just a statement of the behavior. Right? It's summarizing what the triggers are, so what's causing it, or what's happening right before. It's summarizing the behavior and then how you maintain the consequences. So this is basically a guess about the problem behavior. It's not really like a guess because it's an informed guess, if you will, because you do figure out why the child's doing what they're doing. But you have to develop the hypothesis statement. Okay? So here are some examples of what the behavior support team identifies as a hypothesis and how they're written. So these will give you some examples of developing a hypothesis statement. Okay, so after you have done your direct assessment, you figured out the function of the behavior, you have your hypothesis statement, the next thing is you have to implement a behavior intervention plan. So this talks about really how you develop one and what they're used for, and how the team, like what these essential components are that the team develops. Okay, so we're looking at prevention strategies, because obviously we want to prevent the behavior from happening or continuing to occur. You have to teach replacement behaviors. And then you have to have consequence strategies in place. So there's a PowerPoint here that really goes through examples of prevention, replacement, and consequences. And here's a planning chart that kind of also gives you an overview or a visual of once the behavior plan is developed. You have to then monitor the progress to see if the behavior intervention plan is actually working. Okay, so that was lesson 6.1 and 6.2. So now we're going to go over your discussion activity. Obviously, you also have your Module 6 quiz, and then you'll have your fieldwork Part B. So we'll go over the fieldwork Part B in just a minute. Okay, so here's your discussion activity. You're going to watch a video that's called The Effects of Stress on the Child's Brain Development. After you watch the video, you're going to review the PowerPoint, which is called Understanding and Responding to Adverse Childhood Experiences in a School Setting. So really this PowerPoint is going to really look at the triggers for traumatized children. Especially pay close attention to slide 11. Okay? On slide 11, you're going to look and choose one of the 7 triggers. Okay? So the next thing you're going to do is there were 3 responses that the children may experience in responses to the triggers, right? So you're going to do fight or flight or freeze. So you're going to have to identify a strategy and address each of these responses in the context of the trigger. Okay, so remember, you have to follow the guidelines within the PowerPoint. So it's going to talk you through this. And then I want you to kind of give me a brief explanation or rationale about why you would choose each strategy. So when you're doing this post or discussion post, make sure that you write at least 250 words, right? So you're going to put a description on each of those and how you as a teacher might minimize these things through your teaching, right? So there's a rubric here about how you're going to meet the requirements, and it kind of tells you how you're going to be graded. Okay, so for your quiz, Module 6 quiz, okay, so I'll go ahead and it'll open on March 27th, but it's not actually going to be due until April 16th. So you have those 2 weeks until you have to take it. Okay, and the last section I really want to cover here with you is going to be the Part B of your field work. Okay, so to get to it, you're going to click on Fieldwork Assignment. Okay, So once you click on fieldwork assignment, you'll find it right underneath module 1. You're going to see fieldwork assignment, and then underneath it's fieldwork videos. So if you click on fieldwork videos, it's going to give you videos. So you have Lydia, then you have the win-win inclusive, you have Mia's story, you have Ruby's story, FISA, and then primary school. But I want to go back to the fieldwork assignment, and I want to specifically look at part B. Okay, so you've done part A, so just to recap, in part A, you had to complete each of these components. So you had an observation of environmental components, and you had to complete the form, right? So the areas we were looking at were physical, social, and temporal environment. You had different steps I had included about you were going to select 3 videos, right? One from the toddler, one from preschool, one from primary, right? That was going to be how you were going to complete that form. Part B, I want to walk you through what I want you to do. Okay, so throughout this course, really we talk about early childhood professionals, how you can make it more inclusive and accessible for young children. So in the part B, we're really going to be looking at how we support the children. So we have some practices, inclusive practices, defined and explained here. So practitioners, engagement, we're specifically looking at individual instructional supports, looking at behavior supports, positive practitioner-child interaction. Then you have your partnership with families and professionals. So we're going to look at all those and look at the definitions. So the part B of the field work is really wanting you to look at the experience the children who are inclusive, like so those with disabilities. Look at their experience in the classroom. So in all the 7 videos used in fieldwork part A, you're going to determine the effectiveness of the inclusion by writing about the inclusive practices. So engagement, individualized instruction of child, you're going to be writing about the behavior supports, the child interaction, the partnership with families and professionals. And you're going to really reflect on your understanding of inclusion and its meaning to you as a future professional. Okay, so essentially it's going to be a paper. And how I want you to write your paper is you're going to write sections. So you'll have different paragraphs. You're going to label each section of your paper. So you'll put section 1, engagement, individualized instruction supports. So with that section, you're going to really determine the effectiveness of the inclusion by writing about the engagement, individualized instruction supports. Remember, you have to use those same videos in the field work, okay, that you saw in part A. Then the next section you're going to write is section 2, behavior supports, right? So you're going to write about the effectiveness or determine the effectiveness of the behavior supports. Section 3, you're going to label it section 3, positive practitioner. And you're going to do the same things for 3, 4, and 5. So under each labeled section, you're going to be writing about what's listed below, right? So you're going to be writing about the individualized instruction supports. Okay, so I put some explanation and instructions here and some questions to help guide you in your thinking. So each section should be about at least 300 words or up to 350. Okay, so it's important for you to make sure you're writing enough about it so that you're meeting the rubric that I have for you. So just make sure when you're labeling them and you start writing, I really want you to focus in on these questions and these prompts to help you answer the questions. So you'll do that for each section. There's 5 in all. So just to kind of look at, make sure that you have an understanding of like what inclusion is after you watch the videos. Make sure you answered all the questions. Okay, look at the grading rubric. Look at it twice, once before you start and the second one before you start, or after you finished. So make sure when you're watching the videos you're taking notes, right, for each section. So remember that you have to refer to at least 2 videos and 2 age levels in each section. And then you're going to write the paper. So make sure it's in paper format. Make sure you label it each section as I've asked you to. and make sure that you look for mistakes and grammar and corrections. And then when you're all finished, you will submit it in a Word document. So when you save your paper, make sure you put your last name, then put fieldwork B. Okay, and then that's how you will save it and then upload it into Dropbox, but make sure it's a Word document. And that is due April 9th. So just make sure if you have any questions, you reach out to me. You will have to use the same videos under fieldwork videos to complete this. These questions are really going to help guide you into what I'm looking for and what I want you to answer. Make sure to take notes though when you are completing or watching the videos. It's really going to help you when you're answering these questions. So I would almost say, read the rubric, read the questions, then watch the videos and take notes, and then that's going to really help you to be able to write this paper. Alright guys, so that's all I have for you for Module 6. Please reach out if you have any questions. Like I said, the fieldwork Part A was due 23rd, March 23rd. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out, or if you have any concerns. Alright guys, I hope you have a great couple of weeks. Until next time, I'll talk to you then.